I was born in India, in a village, on the 1st of July, 1918. 1918 I was born. On the 11th of November, at 11 o'clock, 1918, the war came to an end. So my birth was like a blessing, for the world. Then up to the age of 9, I hadn't seen my father, because before I was born, my father had gone to South Africa. So at the age of 9, he sent a ticket for me. So for the first time now, I'm going from the village to Bombay, the seaport. And for the first time in my life, I see the sea. It took us almost 1 month from Bombay to Durban. In August 1927, I reached Durban, South Africa.
The Madrasa Arcade in Durban, South Africa.
The curious narrow alleyways of the Madrasa Arcade are familiar to Yaqub Mehtar. Over 50 years ago, he and his young friend Ahmed would wander through the marketplace on their way to the tailor shop of Ahmed's father, Hussein Deedat.
And this is the shop of Mr. Deedat Senior. Right. Now here was a machine, a manual pedal machine. The machine was here, and all around him used to be material, patching material. So if any customer came and he wanted some patching done, then he would take a piece of material nearest to what the man had, and then he would patch it up, and his fee was about 25 cents.
9-year-old Ahmed Deedat moved to Durban in 1927 to join his father Hussein, who had settled there a few years earlier. Ahmed's voyage to South Africa had been long and difficult. In fact, he almost never made it to the streets of Durban.
I nearly never disembarked. The ship was one day late, and the authorities wanted to send us all back. But my father insisted on taking me off the ship. When I got off and rode on a tram, I thought my father owned the tram. I saw my father pay the fare. I thought he was paying the wages of one of his employees.
The tiny shop in which his father worked made little revenue. Due to the strict apartheid government, his opportunities were limited since he was not of European descent. But Hussein Deedat was not driven by sales.
No, he was not interested in that. He led a very simple life. At that moment, he didn't have in that his mind that he wants to be somebody with a lot of money. No.
All he did was, he made a living out of it, a humble living. And I think he didn't push for any more money. Whatever he earned for the day, he was quite happy with it. Close the shop and go talk to the shopkeepers around there and walk around.
My father was a strong man. He loved the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam intensively and did not tolerate any disrespect towards the messenger. My father was not a worldly man. He was only interested in working to the extent necessary to make ends meet.
Much of the money went to pay for the rent of their small apartment in Ismail building next to one of the oldest mosques in Durban. One of Ahmed's neighbors in the building, Ahmed Suleiman Beylim, would eventually become one of his lifelong supporters.
This is the building, and on the right you see this apartment here. Ahmed Deedat and his family stayed, and I used to be his neighbor, next one, which is in apartment number 2.
Well, you are very close.
So we're very close. In fact, nice people, but the family was very poor people. We didn't have a time to go into his home and spend hours with him sitting and chatting. We didn't have it, but we used to meet.
Ahmed enrolled at the Anjuman school, where he was in Standard 4. It was the first time he had seen the letters ABC and heard the words yes and no. In 6 months' time, however, he had learned English and became the top of his class. He was promoted to the next standard, where he also excelled academically.
It was not difficult for me to move from India because I was young. So I adapted very easily.
Every day he walked to school and back home because his father couldn't afford the bus fare of 2 pennies. He later moved on to Sastry College, a respectable school built by an Indian immigrant to South Africa. Ahmed showed up for the first day of his new school in his clean new uniform, ready to hit the books.
But this is where Ahmed Deedat's education came to an abrupt end. He must have spent only a few hours walking these corridors because after only 3 days at college, his father pulled him out. Financial considerations put an abrupt end to him furthering his education.
I was not sad when I had to leave college. I had to work when I left college. So it was a matter of survival. My father told me to go to work, and I went to work at Adam's Mission.
Adam's Mission was outside Durban in the rolling hills of rural South Africa. Ahmed took a job in a country store called the O.N. Mohammed Shop. Just across the way was the enormous Adam's Mission Complex, an institute where young missionaries learned how to convert others to Christianity. The new Muslim shopkeeper across the road, who knew next to nothing about any religion, became their homework.
Almost from the day he arrived, he found the students and the teachers attacking Islam and attacking Muslims. It was a daily event for him to hear disparaging remarks, especially remarks like the Quran, your Quran is false, your Prophet is false, your religion is false, you are destined for hell.
He was very easy target at that time because firstly he didn't even know much about Islam. All he knew was La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. As soon as they should see this easy meat, they should go for it. And they should hammer the brains out of Deedat.
So they would come to the shop to do the buying, sugar, salt, flour, rice. And then they would start with us. He says, you know Muhammad had so many wives. I knew nothing about that. He says, you know Muhammad, the spirit is a religion at the point of the sword. Meaning he threatened people that if you do not accept my religion, I'm going to chop off your heads. I knew nothing about that. So he copied his book, the Quran, from the Jews and the Christians. I knew nothing about that. Now this constant attack, what was I to do?
We went to Adam's Mission to ask the missionaries if there was anyone around who still remembered Ahmed Deedat and the shop. Desmond, the teacher and public relations director at the missionary college there, does remember going to the store often. There's not much left of the store today, but Desmond took us to the site where it used to stand.
Yeah, that's where the shop used to be, and it was all burned out.
I see.
Yes.
And is this the foundation stone here of where the...
Yeah, that's the foundation here. Yes, because it was wood and iron, so that's why it got bent out completely.
Where was the front of the shop?
The front of the shop was here, facing this way, facing the college.
Yeah. And what is that house over there? What?
That building here, it was a building that was owned by Mr. Mohammed himself, O.N. Mohammed. He used to stay in here. So that's where Mr. Deedat could have stayed too.
Might may have stayed there too.
Yeah.
As a young person, he was agitated and angered by this type of harassment, and he felt an urge and a desire to respond to them, but he was not equipped to deal with the challenges because he didn't have the background knowledge in developing the responses that were required.
It was while he was cleaning out the shop where he worked that he stumbled across a book that would change his life. A book which remains in his personal library to this day.
This one here, this is the Izharul book, Izharul Haq, the truth revealed, the original.
This is the book he found.
This is the book.
Ironically, Izhar al-Haq was a religious dialogue between a Christian priest and a Muslim imam. In it, Deedat found for the first time a response to the Christian allegations posed to him. Book by book, page by page, his mind began filling with dates, names, facts and quotes. But not only was he learning about his own religion, he found one book in particular very interesting, the Bible.
This is Mr. Deedat's very first notebook. The very first ever notebook of his research. The Bible verse is there, he cut out Bible verses and he stuck them alongside. These are his hard work research in the 40s.
He knew the Bible more than even the Quran. He studied the Bible and he could quote at random at any time, any place.
The type of format that my father had when he read books, History of the Jews by Paul Goodman. When he reads books, as soon as he has read them, he makes notes, specific notes. Jews hailed Muslims, conquest, page 71. So it's easy reference, and he marks them. Look at that. Islam, he marks every book. So all this is the University of Sheikh Ahmed Deedat. No schooling.
This is where he went to school?
This is his school. You're looking at the University of Sheikh Ahmed Deedat. And I call this the University of Hard Knocks, where you have to knock your head and read and read and read and no end of reading.
Ahmed Deedat now had his armor. His shield would be his extensive knowledge of the Bible and Quran, and his sword would be his frank, piercing style of delivery. In 1940, he took to the stage and began giving lectures to small audiences, the first of which was Muhammad, the Messenger of Peace. His friends helped him secretly put up posters at night, since it was illegal to hang posters advertising such a talk.
The greatest and the first moment of my life and the proud started about Ahmed Deedat when I was a boy of 12, when he gave his first lecture in a cinema known as Avalon in the year 1939 or 40.
His wife, Hawa, was at first shocked to see her husband doing so well up on the stage.
I thought, can this man talk?
Then of course the audience was small, sometimes 10 people, 12 people, because he was just coming up, you know.
But his talks gained in popularity until eventually he found himself here at the town hall in Durban. He now had a full house of around 2,000 people. Deedat's lectures here were some of the few events in which segregation briefly disappeared. His message was that there were many contradictions in the Christian Bible and doctrine, and that Muhammad was indeed a noble messenger sent by God. Half a century later, the seats are empty and the great hall is nearly silent. All that remains is the sound of the antique grand piano getting a tune-up. This piano, too, was a quiet spectator at many of Ahmed Deedat's lectures here. But it must have long forgotten the scores of those angry listeners who stood up to challenge him, as well as the numerous conversions which occurred after his talks.
How many times is Mary, the mother of Jesus, mentioned in your Bible? I said, a Christian. I want a Christian to answer that, please.
Sir, I want to ask you a question.
No.
Why are you mentioning a monitor in this missionary?
My dear brother, simple question, simple. No, I was not trying to score any points. I said, how many times is Mary, the mother of God, your mother of God, how many times is she mentioned in your book?
But the footsteps of that first night can still be heard by those who listen hard enough. Once a shy young businessman fresh from Gujarat, Suleiman Sheikji can still remember the exact spot where he sat over half his lifetime ago.
So either you are lying, bluffing, deceiving people,
For him, Deedat is still on the stage, his distinctive arms flying about, his booming voice echoing throughout the auditorium. He can still feel the excitement of the crowd and the tension in the air.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
Very long time. Over 40 years.
And you'd be seated here?
Yes.
What would Ahmed Deedat talk about?
About Prophet Muhammad, just in terms about Jesus, Muhammad in Islam, what the Bible say about Christian.
What was he like as a speaker?
He speak very well. Simple English. He speak. All understanding. Even small children used to come there, used to like him to understand him.
What was their response? What did they think of Ahmed Deedat? Did they like him? Did they hate him?
No, we all liked him. A few of them just hate him. Of some Christian missionaries, they used to hate him.
We attended not so much for the benefit we would have got out of his talks. Not so much for that, or not so much to learn. We were young people in our early 20s, and he was, I won't say hating back at the Christians, but he was debating and putting our point across to them, and he was like when you go to a boxing match and you got your hero hitting the opposite side. That was more than anything else, not so much to learn.
My early talks were very successful, and I expected them to be a hit because I was raising a hot topic. So I anticipated a strong turnout.
Oh, Papa,
He used to lecture in the house a lot, and I used to complain, "You're making a lot of noise. You're a very noisy man."
I was very, very proud of him. Every lecture, every way, wherever Mr. Deedat was gone, I was always present there.
But we were supporting him in his work, and we always tell him that you go ahead. Whatever you want to do, and we'll push you and we'll help you in whatever manner we can. We'll support you all the way.
But not everyone was so supportive. Some Christians and Hindus felt his sarcastic comments were disrespectful. They were also frustrated because the evidence he gave was from their own holy books. Many Muslims in Durban felt he was too aggressive in his talks. Organized missionary work was not common in the Muslim world.
It was the many Muslims, Indian Muslims of Durban, who objected to Ahmed Deedat, that he should not discuss any religion or anything and bring the friction between the Christian and the Muslim. They even asked Ahmed Deedat that, Ahmed, stop this, let's not bring enemies, please don't go on the platform, and we, as we had Mr. A.I. Kaji and many other Muslims told him, we will go and tell them that you are young and your blood is hot and you just got onto the stage to say something, but you found it, you cannot do it, so please step down. But Ahmed Deedat says, no, I will do what I want to do.
I don't think at that particular time the Maulanas hated him or disliked him, because he didn't cross swords with them.
The Maulanas were not opposed to me, but they were indifferent to my preaching. They may have been afraid to support someone who was challenging the religion of those who ruled the country at the time. I did not feel threatened by the government, although the special branch visited me and they told me, you are the most dangerous man in South Africa and there is nothing we can do about it.
Eventually, some Muslims became impressed with him and changed their views after they saw Christians and Hindus converting to Islam.
He spoke. I would not remember much, but I believe that 2 Christian priests and 3 or 4 Europeans embraced Islam at his lecture. And those who objected to him, like A.I. Kaji and Kaji Musa, and many of them came and shook hands with Ahmed Deedat and said, Ahmed, we didn't expect this greatness out of you.
But many were to remain opposed to his potent missionary tactics, and some of his strongest opponents were of his own flesh and blood, including his own brother, Abdullah. But Ahmed was devoted to spreading Islam in the best way he knew how, by speaking. He looked forward to the question and answer sessions at the end of his lectures, in which Christians would line up with their Bibles in hand, ready to refute his points. But no question was too difficult for him. He could silence his challenges by quoting the Bible from memory. Meanwhile, Ahmed Deedat was working to support his family as well as his preaching.
I met Ahmed Deedat in 1945 when I was given employment by a firm called Simplex Furniture Factory.
The building of the Simplex Furniture Factory where Ahmed Deedat worked is now a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant.
Now this building was originally a big warehouse in which there was a furniture showroom. Ahmed Deedat's desk was here. Yeah, he used to sit down there, organize his dispatch.
And this is where Ahmed Deedat worked?
Where Ahmed Deedat, as a young man, worked here as a dispatch clerk for the Simplex Furniture Factory, which was the name of the business at the time.
So there wasn't a wall here at that time?
There was no wall, there was only a door here. Now, whatever goods were sold and to be delivered, he used to come out of this door, and at lunchtime he would lock up the door, open again at 2 o'clock, and 5 o'clock, close and take the key home. So he was solely responsible for this door. Now, he was given this responsibility because he was an honest man. And his boss, our boss, because I was also working for him, realized that with him holding that door key, there will be no pilferage.
Ahmed even found opportunities at the furniture factory to give his spiel on comparative religion.
We had an African worker with him, a very nice, humble fellow, and Deedat somehow liked him. He should take him to his house to do the odd jobs, like how we to make use of these people. They work for the firm, how you take them and do your private work a bit here and there. But his name was Dadan Pengu. That was his name. And he was a very nice fellow, humble fellow, so Deedat took a liking to him. And he became Deedat's first guinea pig. So he started working on him, Dadan Pengu, and he converted him.
Ahmed's preaching began to take over his life. He moved to apartment number 45 Hussein building, where he put in countless hours of planning as well as budgeting.
My father spent his own money and he printed cards talking about Islam to the Zulu people, to the black people, and you would see clearly here his home address, 45 Hussein's building, Queen Street, Durban, and his home phone number. And he began to do this on his own, distribute cards, everything, his own money.
Many times they didn't have enough money to pay rent for their flats, the homes that they were living in. It was a great struggle, a struggle throughout. As you know, his wife used to make sweetmeats and sell during the Eid al-Adha. He used to have sheep and goat that he used to sell to augment his salary. He was a super salesman. He could have been earning a lot of money, but he gave that up.
We're right outside of the house where Ahmed Deedat used to live. The reason I'm trying to be quiet is because the current occupants have asked us to keep the noise down. You see, there's someone inside who isn't feeling very well, has just had a stroke. We might try and make our way in a minute and take a look inside if possible. But it's interesting to note that this house is very close to the mosque right across the road in Durban. That's the mosque where Ahmed Deedat used to take visitors for a little tour. And it was strategically positioned
because he used to invite people to come to his home, have a meal, have some samosas, and explain to them what Islam is, and then tell them, you know, there's a mosque just across the road. Would you like to come take a look at the mosque? And that was part of the core strategy, the core dawah strategy of Ahmed Deedat in the early days.
The front door is as far as we got, but it was obvious that this was not luxury housing. He must have lived humbly to save money for his preaching. And although money was tight, he still tried to make his family a priority.
Whenever I'd see something I liked, Mr. Deedat would buy it for me. I didn't even have to ask. All I would say is, "That's nice," and he would get it.
Meanwhile, his popularity was growing nationwide. He was invited to Cape Town, where he received an overwhelming response. As a boy growing up in Cape Town, Ibrahim Saleh Muhammad not only attended Ahmed's lectures, he also helped to promote them.
I know this road so well. You know, in the past we used to, when Sheikh Deedat used to come to Cape Town, we used to come down this road and paste posters all over the show. Sometimes illegally, but in those years there weren't any clauses in the government to say that we couldn't do it. And that was one of the areas that gained him popularity, was the fact that his poster was all over the show, and everybody wanted to meet this man and see who he is.
Ibrahim's father, Saleh, who was then the owner of the Rosmead supermarket, befriended Ahmed late one night when he came to the shop needing a favor.
Sheikh Ahmed Deedat had a talk at one of the mosques, and the lecture ended quite late, and he normally stayed with the Sayyids. And when he returned to the Sayyid's residence that night,